Okay. And we're off and running. We are live with the one and only Lance Goyke, and then Rufus, the great legendary Rufus, who, if you've met him, you know of him. If you haven't, shame on you.
You've probably heard of him.
Yeah, you've probably heard of him. He's just like this. He's like the mythical unicorn that everybody knows exists, but they've never really gotten eyes on him before. But thanks to both of you for coming on today. Rufus, I think the primary reason that we wanted to record this podcast is because we wanted to bring a different perspective, a different conversation in when we're thinking about this athletic development realm, the place for Olympic lifts, because I'm pretty comfortable and confident in saying that you have at least 1,000x more experience and time with the Olympic lifts than Lance and I combined. So just want to be able to open the conversation, hear a different perspective on where they can fit in this realm, because obviously we recorded a podcast a few weeks back talking about kind of where we see Olympic lifts fitting. And we essentially came to the conclusion and said, hey, like if you compete in CrossFit, you obviously need to do them because you are more or less competing in the Olympics of Olympic lifting and gymnastics for really high reps. And then if you compete in Olympic weightlifting, it's obviously required because that is your sport. But then there's this large gray area of people that just want to be strong. They want to put on muscle. They want to be more powerful. They play football or they play basketball or this, that, or the other, figuring out the best tools for the job to build these very resilient, strong, powerful athletes. But before we go anywhere else, I think it's probably best if, Rufus, if you can give the quick elevator pitch, just kind of who you are, what you do, all that fun jazz, so everybody listening can get up to speed and get to know you a little bit.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm in the beautiful Mecca of Greenwood, Indiana, and in the heart of downtown Greenwood, by the way.
Living big.
Yeah, exactly. It's a suburb of Indianapolis. So basically, I've been in this profession for, 40 or so plus years, and started out like everybody and didn't know anything and just kind of had to feel my way around, and got involved in Olympic weightlifting kind of by accident, actually. I started out coaching football, and our team was really bad. We were slow, and we were small, and we weren't very athletic, and so, but we were smart. And it was a small Catholic high school, and so I just was always looking for a better way to build our athletes and make them better. And at that time, you didn't have all this plethora of information that y'all are lucky to have now. We didn't have the internet and stuff like that, and so you guys are 30 years ahead of me when I first started, just because all the experiences that you've had, which nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's great. And, but they wasn't like that back then. And so it was, I found out that, hey, here's another tool to the toolbox to build my better athletes. I knew we had to get better athletically, but nobody ever talked about it. So, it's just, and, I just think of the Olympic lifts as a tool in the toolbox. Nothing more than a kettlebell or any other exercise or implement you can use. It's just a tool.
Absolutely. And I think when used and coached correctly, I think we would all agree that it can be an incredibly powerful tool. And so I think a really good place to start the conversation would be, and Rufus, I know that you've thought about this a lot, if we think about the development of an athlete over time, right? Like actually getting kids started at an early age. If we look back at that old Russian literature and we're looking at this physical literacy that takes place over the development of, right, being 7 years old, 8 years old, 10, 15, 18, 25, like what that progression looks like. And I think part of the issue here potentially is just like we're getting kids that aren't doing anything, and then they jump into high school and they have such large amounts of underlying like issues, like just baseline movement competency is so bad that it's hard to like bring those to the table right away and like be effective at all. Because it's like, well, you can't hinge, you can't squat. If you stand on one leg, you fall over. It's just like the things that we see from a presentation standpoint all the time. If we were going to kind of zoom ourselves out though and think more perfect world, right? Like if we could design this perfect world exactly how Rufus would want it to be, what would those earlier years look like in terms of like when can we get kids started? When can we start drilling mechanics and technique and things along those lines? Like what would be the ideal progression and layout for you if you kind of just had a blank slate to work with?
Well, the first organized thing I would do is I'd put them in gymnastics, and they would, I think gymnastics. I read somewhere, I think it was from Canada or something. It said that gymnastics is like the basis of all human movement, right? And I had a kid injure his shoulder trying to do a shoulder roll the other day, and
Wow.
knees on the ground, and I mean he wasn't hurt bad. I think he just I think it probably his pain tolerance is probably not very high. but the fact that he can't do it, tells me a lot. And like you said, they can't stand on one leg, and I'm shocked that I have probably 80 to 90% of my kids don't know how to jump rope, and these kids are middle schoolers. And so, so the first thing I would do, I'd put them in gymnastics. And the problem is that the boys want to drop out. Now the girls will stay in it, but the boys want to drop out. And so they've come up, at least around here, they come up these things called ninja classes. And it's tumbling, it's obstacle courses, stuff like that, which is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Leave them that for as long as they'll stay in the dadgum thing, right? And the other thing is that they don't go out and just play. You drive around the neighborhoods, and in Indiana, basketball is king. Football's kind of taking it over now, but basketball was king. And now I'm old, and back in the, when I was a kid, every driveway had a basketball goal. Every farm had a basketball hoop pinned up or put up against the barn, right? You see kids playing all the time. Every park had a basketball court, and you'd see them out playing all the time. You go around the parks now, they still got the basketball courts. The driveways still got the basketball goals, but nobody's out playing. They don't go out and play because they got practice, And so they never develop. One of the things I think they never develop this sense of creativity that you see in some guys that grew up playing on the playground. And when my kids play tag, we play a ton of tag in the gym. And put them in a small area. Okay, now let's see what happens. And literally, they'll make one move, and if they have to make another move, they're screwed. They don't know what to do. And literally, I've seen them stop and look at me. What do you stop for? Well, what else am I supposed to do? And I tell my kids all the time, don't any of you ever become crooks, because the cops are going to run you down. So thievery and burglary and those kind of things are out of the question for you. You're too easy to get caught.
I like that.
And so, they kind of look at me and like I'm half crazy. But, they don't go out. They don't have those kinds of experiences, those movement experiences that you need. And they don't have the body awareness that comes from gymnastics. And they're not very strong. They can't do push-ups, and yet they get mad at me because I won't let them. Or the parents get mad at me because I don't load them up with weight. well, this is a weightlifting class. Yeah, but I'm not loading up a bad movement pattern and screw the thing up even worse.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then you have to sit there and explain to them. Once you explain to them, they kind of get it. But, so we have to go through this whole process. And I know I pronounce his last name wrong all the time. Rob, is it Parinello, or how do you say that, Lance or James? You guys know him?
Panarello, I think.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry. He wrote a great article several years ago, and he talked about, and in I forget the exact title of the article, but it's something to do with, are our kids ready for the training that they're exposed to when they first come? And his argument is no, because they don't have the basic foundation to do all this stuff. So in my mind, I have to go out I have to go back and redo things that they should have learned when they're third and fourth grade. Skipping. How many times do you see a kid skip if you deal with kids, and it's not opposite arm, opposite leg. It's same leg, same arm when they skip, right? And so they do all these things, and once you tell them, and help them out a little bit, they fix it. But just basic little things like that, they should have learned, long before I got to them. They don't have a sense of rhythm. I tell them, I say, okay, now I want you to squat to a 4 count. 1, 2, 3, 4. And invariably, I got to stop them and say, how come you're all the way at the bottom at 2? I'm counting, right? Mm-hmm. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now you should be at the bottom. No, but they are they don't have that, I don't know what it's called, rhythm or coordination or whatever it is, to do those things. And so, and all they concentrate on, he's a 90-mile-an-hour pitcher.
Yeah. It's kind of like
who cares if the 13 he throws 90 miles an hour?
Yeah, it's like we're starting so far behind the starting line.
Yeah.
And then you're having to play catch up for so long. And yep. Lance, I'd love for you to chime in here, because I know that this is something that came through when you were at IFAST a lot. These conversations were constantly being had. Just love to get you kind of chime in on this whole concept here of like, and it's weird too, because it's like you see it now where it trickles all the way up when you because we work with people that are obviously more like 25, 30, 35, right? But like you see the trickle effect all the way up, but people that just never had any foundations, and they're like, okay, I don't have any foundations in place, but I'm going to start doing like high skilled movements and gymnastics and Olympic lifts. And I'm like, bro, you're, no offense, kind of a movement retard. Like we need to like really backtrack you here, right? But would love to hear your thoughts here as well.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think back to working with a variety of software engineers and design people who sit at desks all day, and kind of always have, because they've always been good at that. They've always been good at sitting around and working on the computer, and then they find it fun because they know how to use a computer to play games or whatever. So instead of going out and playing and learning that physical literacy that Rufus is describing people can get with gymnastics, for example, they just never pick it up. And once you're 20, 25, 30, like, where are you going to get it? You're never going to pick something up as quickly as somebody else. And to Rufus's point, a lot of these people, they don't have that like framework in their head for problem solving. When a movement wasn't quite right, how can I adjust, right? So when they skip same side, same arm, same leg at the same time, they don't even know it's wrong. And most of them will keep going because eventually they do find the rhythm. as long as they have the physical abilities to actually like jump on one leg, they'll eventually find the rhythm, but they won't say, sometimes they'll say, maybe this doesn't feel right, but a lot of them will just keep going. I don't want to make a blanket statement, but I have another guy. He was a high level hurdler and very, very fast twitch, very fast twitch prone. Like you could tell he was good at lifting when I was working with him. And he started running, and he started running, for long distances. And it's interesting because parts of it look kind of disjointed, but he was very good at it. And for that type of person, they like to think through the movements. And so he was kind of like trying to consciously control everything. And I think that's why some things looked weird, but overall he was in a better spot and he was making it work. So I didn't try to push that too much. I'm reminded of a conversation. I don't know if I've said this on the Rebel Performance Radio podcast yet, but I was talking with a NFL strength coach, and he said essentially the same thing. Even people at those high level of athletics, they don't know how to squat. Only the old guys do. And it just continues to get worse and worse and worse. And so your strength programs are going to get worse and worse because either you're going to load them and they're going to get hurt more often, or you're not going to load them and you're going to lose your job. It's probably a better situation for that person to load and then pretend like the injury likelihood is not increasing because of what you're doing, and that's just a terrible place for us all to be in.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. It's just such a lose-lose for the strength coach at that position, because if you're a high school or collegiate strength coach and you're getting these kids who probably shouldn't be loaded, but like you said, it's like, well, if I don't load them, I'm going to get fired. But if I do load them in terrible patterns, then they're just probably going to get injured. And we just end up, I think, in this survival of the fittest kind of Hunger Games type atmosphere where it's like, well, everyone's going to get loaded. And the few of you who happen to just be genetically gifted enough to manage this appropriately and not get hurt, you're going to come out of this okay. But the rest of you are just going to get thrown into the fire and you're pretty much just going to drop out. And it's kind of funny because, yeah, right. And it's interesting here to kind of pile onto this conversation. My mom's been a lower school PE teacher for well over 30 years. And it's funny talking to her about this because like she's noticed like such significant drops in differences over time, like every 5 years, decade by decade. Like when she first started, what the kids could do versus the kids that she has now, who she's like, they can't even hold themselves, like they can't hold their body weight. Like they can't, like push-ups are out the window. Like just getting them to hold themselves in the top position of a push-up.
Yeah.
She's like, and just like basic things, they're like, it's just gone. Like they can't skip, they can't roll, they can't hold a push-up position. And it's, I'm not sure exactly how to go about like fixing this problem.
I'm reminded of coaching some kids in that position that you're talking about. And it's like, pick your belly up, pick your belly up. Pick your belly up. And I'm like, okay, maybe they just don't know where their belly is. So I walk over and I pick them up and I have to deadlift the entire weight of the child to get to some semblance of a position. And then as soon as they exhale, they've lost it. It's like, it takes half a breath, you know?
Well, it's kind of funny. Like go ahead, Rufus.
No, I was going to say, you're talking about the Russian model and the Russian system. It's not that they start weightlifting at 5 years old, but they go through this very long period of what we call general GPP, general physical preparation, and it's track and field stuff, and it's running, and it's playing different games and learning different skills. I know I've told this to Lance. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but the national coach for USA weightlifting, was a guy named Dragomir Troslan. And he told me one day, he said, by the time I was 15, I knew how to play 15 or 20 sports. You know, how many of our kids ever get exposed to that many different sports? They don't. And so, as a matter of fact, I've got a book around here that was a Russian physical education textbook. And in it, and I can't remember the leader's name, whoever the president of the country was or whatever they call him. Okay, he said that something to the effect that our people have to be in shape for work and defense of the mother country. And what they did, they took that model, and this is back in the long time ago, 30s or something. And they took that model and applied the same thing to sport. And if you look at weightlifting, I don't know about the other sports, but weightlifting, it took them about 12 years after World War II to where they dominated the sport of weightlifting. So, which is about the time from developing athletes. Now, what nobody understands is the national rule that was in place at that time was that you couldn't lift weights until you were 12 or 14 years old. Okay, so they spent time working on different things. Have you ever seen the boxer Lomachenko?
Mm-hmm.
So, the guy, you ought to watch him, Lance. The guy's unbelievable, right? And he grew up. His dad was a boxing coach. He wanted to be a boxer, became pretty good when he was very young. His dad told him, he said, now you're going to dance school and you're going to learn traditional Russian dancing. And the kid said, no, I'm not going to. His dad says, well, you're not going to box anymore. So the kid went to Russian dance. And I forget it was 6-10 hours a week, something, of Russian dance that he would do. And just learning that timing and that rhythm and watching him do stuff in the ring. I mean, he moves like nobody I've ever seen. And he'll hit you from the weirdest angles, that he gets into just because he can move and do all those things. Well, what they did was they first built the athlete. Then they made weightlifters and sprinters and, whatever else it was. But the first thing they worked on was building an athlete.
Yeah. It's just so important. There are so many things about being an athlete that people take for granted. Like, we can easily measure how much weight you're lifting, but that's such a small piece of who is a successful athlete and what makes you a successful athlete. One topic I did want to bring up and maybe hear your thoughts, Ruf, is all the just mind development. Like, not only like your kid you talked about, you said it very nice, which was surprising, but you said he had a low pain tolerance, which is a good way to call someone a wuss without being too degrading.
I got lectured from Corey yesterday about how I'm supposed to act on this.
And that's why he's running your podcast. Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
So if you haven't checked out Rufus's podcast, you definitely should.
Smoothies with Rufus. That's going to be put in the show notes.
Yes. But part of this is, this is still something that I played outside a lot when I was growing up, regardless of all these asthma and allergies that tried to stop me. But I played a lot, and I had two brothers, and I had friends, and we played like football inside, and we played tag outside, and we were hiding. I climbed trees a lot. And even with all of that, like, I can pick up movements pretty well. But if I'm inactive for a little while, I still become awkward because it's a pattern that needs to be practiced. You need to remember how to do it, and you need to remind yourself how to do it. The pain tolerance is all part of it. So if I don't, me personally, anecdotally, if I don't work out for a week, I'm probably okay, but I can get my general problems are chronic pain related. So I'm much more likely to get set off from something like I'm going to whine about my feet hurting, my back's going to be real tight, my hip's going to hurt. But if I do an appropriate amount of volume, not too much volume and intensity and everything, but if I do an appropriate amount, then I can condition my mind and my body to be okay with those types of loads, and I can accept the pain that comes, and I can understand. Maybe I'm a little sick in the head, but I can understand that it's good for me, so I want more, you know? I think about Rufus, the squat count, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I know exactly the scenario you were painting. So you go 1, 2, they're already down there, and then they're like, how do I go lower? I'm already down here. And then they look at you like, coach, tell me what to do next. Because they haven't played tag. They don't know how to make the second move, for example. They don't have a framework in their mind that says, this is my body and this is how it should be used.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so tell me if I'm wrong, but I think there's 2 questions in there: pain tolerance and how do you get them down into the squat. Is that right? Is that fair?
Something like that. I was all over the place.
So I think the pain tolerance, I think, comes from playing. Okay, you don't want to be a sissy and cry in front of your buddies. Or, I guess now it's all right, but back when I grew up, you didn't. That was forbidden, right? You stepped in a hole, you walked off the ankle sprain. And sometimes you can walk it off. If you get up, you get up. I found that if a lot of times if I can get up right away and start walking around on it, it'll go away and you're good to go. Right. And now you guys can tell me, more why that is. I don't know, but, so there's not that pressure now to suck the pain up. I can remember separating my shoulder the first time in a football game, and I'm laying on the ground, and one of my teammates goes, "Get your ass up." Okay. He was a year or 2 older than I was. So okay. So I got up, right? So I went off the sidelines, but I got up because I didn't want to look like a sissy in front of my teammates. Okay. So, and then I learned you don't want to let the enemy know whether you're hurt or not. Right. So, we don't do that anymore. They lay around on the ground and, they get a little bump, and they lay around on the ground, do all this stuff. And so I think a lot of that, comes from the environment that we're in. I remember there was a Purdue quarterback that got carted off with a leg injury in a game one time. And the picture showed his mom riding on the golf cart with him, which at that time was absolutely taboo. Your mama comes down and you got to be carted off with your mama on the cart, and even the newspapers got on him about it. It was hilarious.
Oh, man.
But that's the first thing that goes through everybody's mind. What a sissy. His mama came out of the stands. Now, I didn't have a mama, but, no mamas came out of the stands. Dad came out of the stands if you were hurt bad enough. He'd come out and he'd stand either along the fence or the sidelines or something to make sure you're all right. And then he'd go tell mama. But mama did not come out of the stands to hold your hand. Okay. And so, I think we, that's kind of frowned upon now as being, too macho. But the other thing, with the squat, the other thing is you have to let the kids find the level. So even though the first day they can't go down to where you want them to go to, okay, that's fine because we'll go down farther and farther. as we progress. So, they talk about Alabama's process all the time, and it's this process. Well, this is the same thing. It's a process. I don't care if you come in, you can't squat. Just stick with me. I'll get you to where you can squat. But it may not be today. It may not be tomorrow. It may not be next month. But that's fine, because at the ages that I get them, hopefully if they stick with me, we'll get them to that point. So I think you let them do what they can do, and then some of them, and you guys have both seen this. They'll go to a point and they don't want to go any lower, and you go just a little bit lower. So from there, it's how good a coach are you? Can you see that they can go just a hair bit lower, and that's fine. That's a win, right? For me anyway. That's a win. So we get him down there, and so, but everything is this process that the whole training cycle, if you will, is a process. Even if you're not ever going to be a high level athlete, it doesn't matter. You still go through these processes. Okay. And the gym class used to be, when your mom started teaching PE, it used to be a process. We did this, we included all these different things. And when you came to the training hall, now you may have to tweak some things, which is fine. I can do that. But most kids are prepared. A lot of them could climb rope, do pull-ups, things like that. Okay. But that was learned in the gym class because you worked on those kinds of things. And we don't have gym classes like that anymore because we don't want to offend anybody.
A lot of PE departments are also losing so much funding.
I don't know as I mean, some of that's it. I think it's not necessarily the funding as it is the nobody feeling that it's important. What's the first thing they cut? Because I gotta be careful how I say this. Because we have all these other programs that we want, that kids should be learning at home, right? So we got to include those in the school now. So we cut recess. We used to have recess 3 times a day.
That's
15
incredible.
or 20 minutes in the morning, something like 45 or an hour at lunch, and 15 or 20 minutes in the afternoon. And we wouldn't play. We played basketball. We played King of the Mountain. We were chasing each other. The girls are over here jumping rope. I'm shocked at the amount of girls that can't jump rope that come to me. That have no idea. I thought every girl knew how to jump rope, right? Because in my day, they all used to be able to jump rope because that's what they did. They'd take those big long ropes and one on each end, and here they go. They sing their little songs, and they jump rope to the little song. And so we missed that. When I was coming up, if you wanted to get fast, first thing the coach told you to do was go jump rope. So you went and jumped rope, right? He didn't tell you, how to do it or anything. So then you watch boxers and you see them jump rope. Okay, so you try to imitate the boxers. It gave you some coordination, some rhythm, and different things. And but they don't do that anymore. It's you got to go to this class and you need to get stronger. Everything's about strength now. Well, yeah, you got to be strong, but how strong do you have to be is my question. I used to tell my weightlifting kids all the time is that Sammy Sosa can't clean and jerk body weight, and the guy hits 70 home runs. Probably never walks in a weight room. Now he's got a talent, obviously.
Yeah.
Probably squats maybe 100 pounds, 200 pounds. Probably never seen the inside of a weight room, if you want to be honest about it. Right?
That's similar to the Bo Jackson story, right, though? Like, Bo Jackson's a great example. He never touched a weight in his own admission.
Yeah. As my good friend Corey Heck, he and I look at videos all the time together about change of direction and stuff like that. One of the great guys with change of direction is Barry Sanders.
The best.
Barry Sanders, I'm guaranteeing you, didn't have Lee Taft to help him. He learned it by going out and playing tag. Now, again, he has a natural ability, but he developed that ability by going out and playing tag when he was a kid and escaping.
Can you imagine how frustrating it would be to play tag with Barry Sanders?
There's a video of him, and he's running a sweep to the right side, and the whole Dallas defense comes over and converges on him, right? He makes one move, and 6 of them fall down at the same time. We counted, I think there's 9 or 10 guys wind up on the ground. And he winds up cutting back to his left. And there was a guy about 2 yards in front of him, about 5 yards to his left. Barry Sanders runs towards the guy, runs around him, and the guy looks like a cartoon looking around like this, trying to figure out which way he went. It's hilarious. All in the same play. It's one of the funniest videos. We've seen that, I bet, 1,000 times together, just watching it. Just because it's everything that we talked about. What did Herschel Walker grow up doing? He chased a train behind his house every day. That's how he ran his sprints, trying to catch this train, trying to beat the train.
I like that. I've never heard that.
Had an older sister that was faster than they were, and they tried to catch her. And all of a sudden they become, track stars and things like that, or football players and stuff. Now, we can get into the genetics of it and all the other things. But the point is that I don't think, and this is just Rufus's opinion, so you can take it for what it's worth, that my job is to get you as close to your athletic potential as we can. So therefore, you got to do all these different things. That's where the process comes in. If you don't follow a process, doesn't have to be mine or yours or anybody else's, but there's a process that all should be roughly the same thing. How we get there is different, and that's where you as a coach, your creativity comes in. Okay, but this whole thing about developing the athlete. I heard, I think it was Tudor Bamba that said something like this. I'm going to paraphrase it. He gave a definition of an athlete. They're as supple or flexible and coordinated as a gymnast. They're as fast as an Olympic 100-meter sprinter. They're as strong and powerful as an Olympic weightlifter. Okay, well, there's a pretty good athlete if you got that, right? Oh, and they have the endurance of an elite marathon runner. Well, that's a pretty darn good athlete. I got kids can't run across the street. You laugh. I'm serious. I'm being serious. They can't walk. They can't run across the street.
Oh, man.
But yet we put them in an organized sport, put them on a travel team, beat the crap out of them, and they wonder, well, how come I'm not a better athlete? And
There's so much.
I always think because of my experience in weightlifting, I started thinking about how many athletes do we miss because they may be a step too slow for this sport, maybe an inch or two too short for this other sport, and things like that could be great at another sport. So now we go into the exposure part of it. Well, if I only expose you to football, baseball, and basketball, in Lance's case, hockey, or soccer now, I guess, it's only 5 sports to choose from. How many sports are there in the Olympics? I can't remember now, but
a lot.
There's a whole lot more of them, right? That people could be very successful at. that because they don't get the exposure which they used to get during gym class, I mean, they in some high schools, shooting a rifle was a sport. Try to get that passed now. I don't know. I may have been a great shooter. If I'd have started when I was, 8 or 10 instead of 50 or 60, whatever it was. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But we'll never know. And so that's what the gym class was for. We used to do all kind of dancing, square dancing, and I hated those things. So I couldn't keep up. I couldn't keep time to the music, right? And so I was a typical football player. Just run your head through the wall. Doesn't matter how you do it. Just run your dadgum head through the wall. And I don't know if you remember him, but Lance Peters was the exact same way when I got him.
Oh yeah.
He couldn't feel anything. Kid wound up being a pretty good weightlifter.
Yeah.
Once we got him to where he could feel things, and now it took me forever. And he'd have been a lot taller if he could have felt things. So I wouldn't have had to beat on him all the time. It might have been 6'3" instead of 5'3" or whatever he was.
Well, there's one thing I wanted to ask, kind of related to that, Roof, is you talked about, I think a current theme in what you're saying is you're in it for the long haul. Like it doesn't really matter where you start. Let's just work on it.
Yeah.
And you said if they stick with you, that's fine. And Peters is a good example of somebody who stuck with you for a really long time.
Right.
What happens? What types of people don't stick with you?
The ones that want the result quickly.
Is it the child, or is it the family? Is it the coaches?
I think it's a combination of both. We've sold getting strong so well that they don't see that doing a push-up can make you really strong. Or being able to climb a rope can make you really strong. And, just being able to do a body weight squat. Well, gee, now I can do a lot of things. I can drop my hips when I make a cut like I'm supposed to. Or when I'm changing direction, when I'm supposed to. If I can't drop my hips, then, I was watching a middle school football practice yesterday, and, he's got all these nice looking big guys. Very few of them could drop their hips. So they come out off the line of scrimmage, they come out like this. Well, if I'm smaller, I know all I got to do is get underneath them.
Yeah.
And I can control them. So they can't, so they're waist benders instead of, I don't know what the other term is, knee benders or hip benders or whatever, but they bend over from the waist to get lower. Well, that puts them at a disadvantage. But they don't see that. All they see is a number. And that's why I quit. That's why I quit keeping record boards, because the number is meaningless to me. Tell me how much do you have to squat to be a great offensive lineman in the NFL? You can't tell me, because there's so many other things. Now you got to be strong. Obviously, you can't be me and be a great offensive lineman at my strength level, right? So you got to be strong, but do I got to squat 800 pounds to do it? No. I don't.
I think the record boards are used a lot to motivate people. How do those kids like Peters who stick with you for years? Like you could do Olympic cycles, macro cycles with them. How do you keep them coming back, motivated to work on stuff?
They find something they can do, and they're good at it. And that was a unique group, those three.
Yeah.
Because I'd never gone through, thought out a process like I did with them. And, it's a credit. One, they had good mamas and daddies, all three of them. they found something they were good at. They liked the atmosphere, although they didn't like each other very much. But it's like they were like, well, two of them were brother and sister, but it's like the three of them were brothers and sisters. I don't necessarily like you, but by the same token, don't jump on them because then you're going to fight all three of us, right? But if the three of us are together, we don't like each other. And so, I had to pull them aside once in a while, tell them individually, quit picking on him. And so part of that was the atmosphere, the culture that we had there. And a new kid had come in, and you'd see him over in the corner snickering, and they'd tell the guy, said, be ready because he's going to take all the weight off the bar, and you're going to have to do hundreds of these lifts with an empty barbell. And they left because they're so used to the instant gratification of a video game or something like that, where you spend 5 minutes and you can go I don't know how they work, but you get success, you go to the next level or whatever it is. And so if they don't see immediate improvement, wherein that that's why I always try to tell them that's a whole lot better than yesterday, and things like that. So we're getting better, and and then we went to enough meets. Now we didn't go all the time as much as everybody else does, but we went to enough meets that and they would see the difference, because they would come to me and they would say, God, that guy's got lousy technique. And the guy would do more than Peters, for instance, did. I remember Peters lost out to a guy on a clean and jerk. Peters lost out to a guy for best technique that couldn't even squat. He was so pissed that the guy didn't go down and squat. He was furious, man. I had to calm him down. And I said, Peters, don't worry about it. The whole thing's rigged. I said, don't worry about it. But that's the kind of drive that we instilled in them, and then, the fact we were coming to IFAST and you guys were seeing them and coaching them and helping them out and things like that. That's one of the reasons I came up there, was to give them a different place to go and not hear my voice all the time. I want somebody else to talk to them. And plus it was a lot nicer in the wintertime than our gyms because we didn't have any heat. And but it's really hard when the parents and everybody wants instant gratification. All they know about weight training is building strength, and they only equate that to a number.
Numbers, yeah.
If I'm stronger, I'll throw the baseball harder. Not necessarily. Serby, you'd know more about that than me.
Yeah, I think I would potentially argue against that exact statement. Yeah, so, it's like that's one of those attitudes in baseball, which is getting fixed now. Like baseball is coming around to understand that just being able to. Yeah. I mean that's an entirely much longer conversation, right? But if you look at the people that throw really hard, I would bet everything I own that those are not the people that are going to go squat a root. Like they're not going to be the strongest people in the weight room, because what they have to be able to do from a positioning standpoint and like a rotary standpoint to throw a baseball really hard. I'm like, I don't care how much weight you can deadlift or squat. Like if I have pro baseball guys, like we don't even squat. Most of them have such weird levers and they don't move. Like pitchers on the average move horrendously. Right. And it's like, we need enough strength and enough of these other things to keep you healthy, functioning, doing well. But it's like, the conversation is shifting, is changing, fortunately, right? Like obviously guys like Eric Cressy have really been like a huge push to changing how baseball strength and conditioning works.
So strength training is important, but again, it's another tool in the toolbox. You got to, like you just said, pitchers got to be able to rotate. If they can't rotate, there's something we're limiting, and things like that. So there's we may have to throw a 4-pound medicine ball to get him to rotate, or help him to rotate, and things like that. But people are only concerned with how hard does he throw, not how he throws it. And so with that group of weightlifters I had, we worked on. I sold them, and they bought into it, fortunately, on the fact that every lift has to be perfect because the judging is subjective.
Mm-hmm.
And if the guy doesn't like me for some reason, then he could red light you, and you miss the lift because he doesn't like me. It's not that you miss the lift; he doesn't like me. So you got to make it perfect, and everything. That's why we emphasize the perfection of the movement. Lock your elbows out. Don't let there be any wiggle. And I can't ever remember missing a jerk if we got it overhead.
Yeah.
Okay. So, it's all these factors that people don't look into. It's not just a strength aspect of it. And that's why you guys, in what you do and what is so important, because you can go in and say, you can look at the movement, and you may not know pitching, but you can say, oh, look, he doesn't rotate his right hip right now. So that causes him to, throw this way. That's why his elbow, that may be one of the reasons why his elbow hurts, or he's hyperextending when he's going through the pitching motion or whatever, whatever the problem is. That's why guys like you are so important. And, we didn't have that when I was coming up. I didn't know that till I started hanging out at IFAS. So I, and meeting Lance and meeting you and, all the other cast of characters that were there. So that's why those things also are important. They're tools, and all these tools combine to now we can get a more perfect athlete.
Yeah, it's really like a couple of thoughts here. It's really a process problem, not a tool problem.
Yeah.
Right? Like the tool works. We're just not they're just not ready to use the tool. Right?
Right.
Because we have a significant process problem. And to circle back to one of those other examples, I know you mentioned chasing the train. I can remember watching a documentary in high school back when Florida was very good, turning out national championships under Urban Meyer. And the thing at Florida is like they had better skill players than everyone else. They were faster. Their change of direction was better. Like they just went on a run there. And they did a really cool documentary on like a lot of the guys that ended up at Florida grew up in the swamps of Florida. Yep. And growing up, what they did to make a little bit of side cash is they caught rabbits barefoot.
I was just thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, then you give them cleats and put them on a field, and it's just like, oh, okay. Well, this is, it's like, what are we going to do now?
I tell my kids all the time. So that county, I can't remember the name of it right now, but the median income's like $24,000. Well, they don't have the money to come to one of you two guys to get that done. So what do? They go out and chase rabbits, right? And so there's 3 reasons to catch the rabbit. Think about this. Okay, 1, it's fun, right? 2, they can make some pocket change by skinning the rabbit and selling the pelt, right? And 3, if they don't catch the rabbit, they're not going to eat that night. Now, who's going to be the fastest guy? It's going to be the third guy, right? Because he's got to eat, otherwise he's going to die. And so I tell my kids all the time, I said, you want to get fast, you want to change the direction, go chase the rabbit. Go catch him. And when I lived up northwest Indiana, there was a field next to the training hall. Every once in a while, you see 4 or 5 cars parked along there, and I'd see them come back, and there were these kids that I was training. Well, I told them that story, and they'd seen a rabbit, and they were out trying to catch the darn rabbit.
Oh, I love it. That's great.
So one of the things I tell them, I say, you want to get faster? Go chase your dog. Put him in a fence and chase him. See what you got.
I actually did that growing up.
Yeah. I mean, play tag with him. I got a kid.
I lost a lot.
I got a kid right now. We spent the whole summer doing that last year. And he played running back and led the team in the conference, I think, in rushing yards. And I went and saw him play. It's like a whole different kid. And most of what we did was now we worked on some other things, but most of what we did was chase the dog. Every time he'd go out with his phone, hear the dog, he'd call the dog, and the dog was jumping on him, telling him, "Come on, let's go." And you'd see him out there. And it's a true story. I actually had to tell him, don't chase the dog, cut the dog off. Because he didn't know, in football we call them pursuit angles, right? He didn't know what a pursuit angle was. Kid's a senior in high school, doesn't know what a pursuit angle is. You got to be kidding.
Wow.
I said, Luke, how can you not know what a pursuit angle is? Well, nobody ever talks about it. And you watch his game film, and he's on defense. He winds up chasing the guy in a circle around instead of taking a pursuit angle at him. I told him, Luke, don't ever depend on your hunting ability to put food on the table. Because you're going to shoot behind the rabbit all the time, or the bird all the time. But no, I mean, that is, I read that story and it's on ESPN. You got to look it up. It's called The Chase. But that's a great story. Go catch the dadgum thing. And I mean, chasing a rabbit, how many changes of direction do you have to make to try to catch that rabbit?
Oh, you're never not changing direction.
I can't possibly do that many in a gym, right? That's why we play tag all the time. Because we have the square in the gym, 2 squares actually, and they're about 19 by 19 feet. Okay, Usain Bolt can't get out of this area, trust me. But what's the first thing they do? They try to hit the corner. They try to outrun you. Well, there's a sideline 19 feet away from you. You're not going to get by there. I could almost catch you. And they just look at me, but the sad part is they got no clue about using the whole area, or they'll start backing up, right? And they'll get trapped in a corner, and all the defensive guys got to do is just follow him back into a corner, stands there, reaches out, and he tags him.
So I think an interesting question here, and we're almost at an hour, so we can make this the last thing, and we'll kind of start to wrap this sucker up. Because I think we originally started thinking about Olympic lifting, right? But this is where the conversation, I was really kind of hoping it was going to go, because it's the Olympic lifting itself, the tool is not the problem per se. The problem is the fact that it's a process problem. We don't have physical literacy. Like you're taking kids or even adults that go into a CrossFit gym. No offense to CrossFit. There are some very good CrossFit coaches out there, so I don't want to piss all of you guys off, but on the average, what you see there is not the best, right? But you're taking adults who have not had a good process, who are not physically literate, and then it's here, just go Olympic lift. And I'm you haven't done the requisite work to earn the right to be able to do these things, right? And even if you had the baseline movement, you're jumping right to 135 loaded barbells. You're not playing with a dowel and an empty bar to actually drill the technique appropriately. And so I think one of the key questions here, and this could be an entirely other podcast all on its own, but it's kind of, and Lance, I'll kind of direct this to you. I think this is a lot of what you do in your world, which is we know that we have this process problem. We have physical literacy issues. People are not moving well. They don't have good movement options. These just baseline pillars are not present. And we're seeing it all the way up to people being 25, 30, 35 plus years old. How hard is it then to reclaim these core elements for people, to begin opening up more movement options for them so we can do more things?
That's a really good question. It's I would phrase it as a hopeful question, I suppose. from my perspective, there's a lot you can do to be better. My particular type of training is usually taking people from physical therapy and back into the gym, right? And so these people who have maybe been relegated to pain for the rest of their lives find out that that's not necessarily true. Those people can't train like the James Serbys of the world. They're not going to deadlift 450 for reps, you know? And I think part of that is because their body might not be built for that. Part of that might be they don't have the physical literacy built for that. I think it becomes like once you've missed that window, because it closes. Like if you don't play as a kid, you're not going to magically be really athletic later on. You might look athletic in small subsets of athletics, but you're not going to be generally athletic. You're not going to be the marathon runner who has Olympic weightlifting numbers, who has 100-meter sprint time, like on par with Usain Bolt, right? Not that anyone does, I suppose, but
yeah, that'd be an extreme example.
But you're not going to be just. You got to.
If you think of it as attribute bars, right? You're not going to be generally good across the board.
Right. You're gonna just sit and you're gonna do what you're good at, right? And that, you know, anthropomorphics, that is and genetics, that is true to some extent all the time. But it's more so after you've missed this window of physical literacy. Now, you can develop physical literacy later on as you learn how to do movements again. And I would never say that you shouldn't work out just because you missed that window, right? But at that point, I think about it on a slider, and like you're doing less to go advance more, and you're doing more to not regress. And so like, you know, somebody who has no physical literacy can learn the Olympic lifts. It's going to take you way longer than it took Peters to learn it, for example, because you never played sports and you're not that young, you know. But you can do them appreciably. You're not going to be super competitive probably, but what is the purpose? Like the weight isn't the number, or the number isn't the purpose. You're just, you know, compare yourself to what you did previously and then work on that. I think from a mobility perspective, people will have general limitations and those need to be addressed, and those will regress. Bill said something to a buddy of mine, Ben Smith, once. He was like, so he was doing some physical therapy stuff, and he said, so how much of this do I need to do until I'm good? And Bill's response was, because Ben really wanted to be super fit, right? So that was very motivating to him. And his response was, when are you strong enough to stop training? It's like, there's the principle of reversibility, right? If I stop doing it, it's just going to go away. So even if you're not that good at stuff, it's still worthwhile practicing. It doesn't have to be Olympic lifting. It doesn't have to be heavy squats, deadlifts, whatever. It can be unilateral stuff. You can throw med balls. You can play, volleyball at the bar down the street or whatever. Like anything is worth doing. But once you get older and once you've missed that window, you're going to be training to get specifically better at that, even if you're working on your general athleticism. And it's not going to carry over quite as well to other sports, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. I think like there's so much that we can get back, but it's just like if you take a kid who, like Rufus has been talking about this whole time, had tons of play, tons of exposure, like, and you get them when they're in high school, or like when we work with people at Rebel, right, 25, 30, 35 years old, like there's a very clear difference between the people that played tons of sports, just played and had fun and did tons of different things growing up. Like the movement is so much different versus the people that were very much like peg-holed, lived in a very narrow range of exposure. It's like I can improve that for you, but there's no chance I'm going to like give you what like Johnny over here has, right? Like you can improve pretty much anything. It's just the range to which we can improve it. It's a really interesting conversation, like one that I would, and it's something that people need to be having more of. Unfortunately, it seems like things are going in the opposite direction, right? Like it's not getting better. Like the whole specialty specification thing early on in early childhood is just getting worse and worse. So
we specialized too early. Even in the Russian system, they didn't specialize till they were 16, 17 years old.
Yep.
You know, they still were, you know, if you look at the old Russian manuals, you know, even when they specialized, when they were masters of sport, 20% of their training was still GPP stuff. You know, it was the other things. So it was important enough that we still did it at some point during the year. And if your season's over, it's probably the best time to do it. And, you know, you go through a period of GPP stuff, trying to relearn some of those things that you did, that that got you there. You know, not necessarily specifics, but it's the everything.
Yeah,
So,
like I was gonna say, we've talked before here, Lance. Rather, we've talked about different weekly training split options based off your goals, et cetera. And for people listening, like I think a really good place to continue to cook in that GPP style work. Like if we think of that 3-3 split that we've talked about, we have like 3 lift days, 2 easier conditioning days, 1 hard conditioning day. Like those 2 lower conditioning days are great places for just like generalized GPP circuits in play. So you can continue to get those exposures a lot. Because I can tell you from like my N of 1 anecdotal experience, when I get lazy with doing those things and like my exposure narrows, like I end up just feeling like a refrigerator. I just feel like a block who can't move. Things aren't as easy. It's not as fluid. Things are stiff. They hurt. But like when I'm good with my GPP work, getting the exposure to these different elements, like you mentioned with builds, like, well, when are you ever strong enough, right? When I get lazy and take those things out of training, like it only takes me about 1 to 2 weeks to be like, oh, okay, like I need to touch this stuff again, because if I'm not touching it, then I'm causing a problem. But for people listening that are looking for places within training to keep that baked in, that's where it makes the most sense, right? Like if you just have, or classify it as an off day if you want to, just go do really easy GPP circuits, just move through stuff, give yourself large exposures. Just go play games, right? Like just go play spike ball, right? Like you're going to have fun playing spike ball. You're going to get change of direction. You're going to be moving around. Like play as many games as you can. I think play and games are a great option on those lower conditioning days as well, depending on like the structure and how it's set up.
So if I know you got to get off this thing, but if I can just add one thing to
go
that,
for it.
You know, the workout is not written in stone. And as a coach, you got to be able to read your client, or, you know, if you got a group, you got to be able to read the group. And, you know, I can think of one time I was at IFAS and a girl came in and she looks at me and she goes, I just don't think I have it today. And I said, why don't you kick soccer ball against the wall like you've been practicing? Because we had her practicing kicking soccer ball. She's not very athletic. And she did it. And as Lance would say, she got into flow. And she went for like 45 minutes. And she finally stops and she looks at me and she's just pouring sweat, right? And she goes, now what should I do? I said, nothing. That was your workout. She goes, oh, I feel so much better. So, you know, that's an example. And a low-level play thing like that became the workout because that's what she needed for the day. You know, they may come in. Christy, another girl I had, used to come in and she was running track. She was playing club volleyball and she was weightlifting with me. There was days she'd come in and she'd just sit down at my desk and ask a question. We would talk for an hour. That's what she needed for that day. She didn't need for me to be pounding her, you know, and getting after her about her weightlifting. She comes back the next day. It's great. Same thing with this other girl. She came back the next day, she was great. She was ready to work out and everything. And so you have to be able to read that or be able to tell that in yourself. You're not training for the Olympics or, in 2 weeks. It's okay to take an active, I don't want to say a day off, but an active rest day where you just do that, and your day may switch. So just something that you said that I thought was important. Sorry.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that's going to be a really good place for us to wrap up here. And I'll just piggyback that on 1 second here, Roof, because one of the things that I always write into all the programs at Rebel, anybody that I work with and coach, I tell them, you always hold the trump card. It's just because it's on the paper, it doesn't mean that's what we have to do today. It's you hold the trump card, right? We're playing a long-term game, a very long-term game. You only get in trouble when I try to take this game and make it really short. Then we start playing with fire, right? Yep. So I think that is definitely a good one. Rufus, where can people go to find you if you would like to be found? Yeah,
I'm pretty easy to find, I think. Mm-hmm. If you want to call me or write me, my email is rufus.blackbone@gmail.com. Corey Hecht and I and Anthony Iarino have a podcast, Smoothies with Rufus, where we do some interviews and we call it just coaches talking coaches. It kind of reminds me of when we were at IFAST. We'd be sitting around talking, and all of a sudden everybody'd run to the purple room, right? And then we'd run out in the gym and do what we talked about doing. Then we go back to the purple room, talk about it, and then we go back, back and forth and stuff. And that's, to me, that's the best way to learn. So on our podcast, we kind of do that. We don't have a script. We don't send out questions, and stuff like that to the speaker. We don't ask him what he wants to talk about or anything like that. We just, hey, let's just sit down and just have a conversation and see where the conversation goes. So from that standpoint, it may be a little rough and things like that, but that's how I learned coming up, because we didn't have the internet and cell phones and all these other things. Now I'm on Facebook, Grant Gardis on Facebook, and Lance and Brandon Brown set me up on Instagram. I don't know how to work the thing.
You're probably not going to find anything that he posts there.
I don't know how to work it. They forgot to tell me how to work it. Right? They set it up, and I got all these pictures that pop up on it sometimes. And I can't remember. I think it's Grant Gardis or Rufus Blackbone or something. But
you could probably use that. Actually, you could do some quick videos. I think that you'd be really good at the Instagram
I don't know how to do
game.
It. You get tired of me asking questions all the time. I struggle with this thing for 3 days. I've been sitting there for the last hour. When's he going to send me this link?
I can't wait to hear about that.
And so it's like, God dang. But if anybody wants to call and talk and shoot the breeze, I'm more than happy to do that.
He's not kidding.
Yeah, that's a very honest statement. Well, Rufus, Lance, you guys, thank you so much for jumping on today and chatting. Like I said, I wish we could do this every week. I wish that we could just bring back the Saturday lunches, or just everyone gets coffee. We just sit around and you just record it for an hour to 2 hours.
Yeah.
At IFAST, I used to get Lance to try to get Lance to do that, right? And so I envisioned this big library of all these conversations we ever had. I couldn't ever get him to do it, so the library's lost. So
it's a lot of editing.
It's like the Library of Alexandria. It's just disappeared.
It would have been awesome. We'd have this huge library that interns and people could go back and look at, and because some of those conversations, James, they were outstanding. So
that was my favorite part of being there. Was just the off the cuff conversations,
or the lunches, and dinners and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a special time. It's too bad everybody couldn't go through that.
That's very true. All right, fam. Everybody, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Rufus, this was a pleasure, man. I'm really glad that we got to reconnect here.
I enjoyed the heck out of this.
This was fantastic. Everybody, have an amazing week. I'm going to hit the stop record button now.